Hello, everyone. It is December the 30th of 2020. Welcome to Weekly Manga Recap. It is our last regular episode of the year.
Come on, Nick, let's do it together.
Can't listen to that song anymore without that sweet Cobra Kai remix.
Oh,
of it. It's so good.
It's why it's stuck in my head. I've been watching the trailer over and over again, mostly just for that moment.
It's the best version of that stupid song that I've ever heard.
It makes me so excited for the new year, Nick. I am so excited for this year to be done. And like, normally I'm one of the pessimistic people, and I still am, who's just like, look, the new year doesn't really like change anything. It's a pretty arbitrary, clean slate when you get right down to it. A lot of the problems that we had with this year are systemic and are not going to just change because a number on a calendar is different. But I want to believe so. And also Cobra Kai Season 3. And it's really, those are the two things keeping me going at the moment.
I have to say, yeah, I mean, this year was not as hard for me as it was for a lot of other people. I'm fortunate that I'm at a point in my life in a lot of different ways where the effects that everything had on my life were not nearly as drastic as they could have been. It was very upsetting, though, to see the way that people's lives were getting worse this year. And like the number of people that, you know, we've had to do like in memoriam stuff for has been really bad. And then like a whole, like this past week, like a half dozen more have been going through news feeds and stuff. It's like, God, it sucks. It's just like getting all the last little bits in. As people are like, yay, we made it. And it's like, well, hold on. There's a little bit more bad news I got to give you. But
no, for some reason, this stretch to Christmas to the end of the year has just been like, well, we're going to be a little unrelenting, I guess.
In America, at least, it feels like most of the month of November was actually pretty good. You know, it kind of like gave us the whole like, yay, things are going to not be as bad anymore. And I think that kind of gave us some momentum to like push through a bunch of stuff without a whole bunch of weighing us down. And then it's like, okay, that feeling has kind of faded. And it's like, all right, we're still in the midst of everything that was here. We've got to work hard and get out of it. But Chris, let's try to be positive.
Let's talk about manga.
You know what? If I'm being entirely honest, I think that for our show and for the stuff that we've been doing, this has been one of the better years that we have had. I have had some wonderful times talking about stuff with you. We have talked about some very memorable manga, some very memorably bad and wonderful too. We have gotten closer to our community in a lot of different ways. It's, you know, this has made me realize how very fortunate we have to have you guys watching, not, you know, a number of you watching, but like the very specific people that all of you are. It has made me realize how incredibly fortunate we are that we are able to, you know, just kind of share our stuff that we love with you guys.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for, you know, being part of our lives like that.
Absolutely. I think in many ways the podcast has gotten better or has had a very good year. And I'm not here to pat ourselves on the back or anything like that. It's more so a sense of it. There has been a sense of rejuvenation. I think there was a big effort in that back when we had our donation drive. I think was definitely a moment of you know, I don't know the word I want to use there. Let's just say great stuff. And I think we've had, as you said, a lot of really good discussions. And I think, in general, I really enjoyed manga this year, too, which has not always been the case. I think if you were to measure how much I enjoyed manga on a quantifiable scale from the start of the year to the end of the year, this is one of the few where I'd be like, actually, I think it went up a little bit.
No, I mean, we definitely had a few weeks where we were just like, oh, everything sucked. But we had a lot where it was like, wow, that there, I mean, just even if you just focus entirely on the content of the stuff that we were reading, which we were about to spend a lot of time doing, a lot of shit happened. So
yeah, well, I guess we want to start kicking it off. We'll start this by talking about the various series we discussed throughout 2020. The series we did, a recommendation. Yeah. Oh, God, I forgot which one's to start, though.
We're going to start off with one that's going to be a little uncomfortable. By the way, did we do any Pokemon or JoJo this year?
No, we took off because I think there was a thought we had reached the the alternate reality part of JoJo, and I think we'd also kind of reached the point where a lot of the Pokemon stuff, we're reaching the end of the Pokemon stuff that had been translated, I think.
And also like stuff that we're probably more familiar with because like we're past the point where I had read in Pokemon, and also I think past the point where either of us were like, had memories as kids or teenagers of playing any of the games.
Yeah.
Because like once you get into Black and White, it's like, oh, well, I'm older than college age now, and these Pokemon games are coming out. So.
Although I do have some good memories for Black and White. Maybe we'll get to that at some point.
All right. We'll have to keep both in mind. But anyway, yeah. We'll just get past it. The first series we actually read as a recommendation this year was Actage. It was to discuss it very briefly and objectively. It was a series that I was pretty positive on at first, and Chris, you were not really into. As we added it to the recap, because it was something that people have kind of been wanting us to do as a recap for a while. We kind of went through a negative period with it at first, but then there was an arc that we were getting really into. And then midway through the year, news broke that the author of the series was a suspected sex offender. And so we decided to drop it basically as soon as we heard the news. And then the decision was made for us anyway immediately after that, because Shonen Jump decided to drop the series as well. And so that's it. Actage is gone. The author is suspected of being a criminal. We're done with it. That's just, I mean, yeah, it's not even, I'm not going to mention this even as like one of my best or worst anything recommendations after this. I'm just done. So
there you go. Boom.
After that, we did Mob Psycho 100, which I think was a very largely positive review from each of us. Maybe
I recall it not being positive enough for some of the people who were listening.
There were people who were much more into it than we were.
Yeah, so. I think it almost comes off as negative solely because it's just something we weren't really big into, so it came off more negative than it probably was.
I've been watching some like playthroughs of stuff, like, because one of the best things I find for me to just like kill time if I'm wanting to like, work on something kind of mindless during the day is to put on like some sort of long play or something like that and listen to that like a podcast style. And I've come across a few where people, were like, oh yeah, I'm enjoying this, but I have a lot of problems with it. And then they get, people making comments. They're like, why is it? Just they're angry that people are not happy about every single facet of a game. So, I can understand, like, if you really, really, really like something, you feel the need to defend it. But
I do get it too. Like I could imagine if I enjoyed a particular podcast, they talk about a kind of media, and then they talk about one of those things. Like if I remove myself, I'm listening to a popular manga podcast, and that's not what we are. But in this hypothetical, we're also a popular manga podcast. If I was listening to it and I was like, oh, I can't wait for them to talk about Ice Shield 21, and then they're just kind of lukewarm on it, I definitely, and it's understandable from both sides. I understand why somebody would be like, I was really bummed that they didn't like it. And then oftentimes the easiest way to deal with that is to be like, well, they were just wrong about this or something like that. And I also get it from the person who's on it, who's just like, look, man, I don't know. We can't always like dig the same thing. Sometimes it just doesn't work out that way.
Yeah. You can talk to Skitch or Jamie sometime about the very heated conversation I had with a girl a few years younger than us about, because she really liked Prince of Tennis and thought that Ice Shield 21 was bad. And so we got kind of into a very passionate anime fan discussion about it. After we did Mob Psycho 100, we did Zatch Bell or Gash Bell, depending on how you want to say it. It was a very nostalgic thing for you, and it was one that was very positive from both of us, but I think especially from you.
Yeah, I remember liking Zatch Bell a lot.
BEASTARS was one that I think that I was considerably more positive on than you were. I think you were like, all right with it, and I was like, oh, this is good. And I think that about sums it up. I guess, and I think that everything that we've covered up until one after this is all stuff that like people already know what it is. We don't really need to like remind people about it. Blue Flag, great series. We like read it like just as it was finishing up its run on Manga Plus. I think that we had quite a few different things to say about it because it was such a like, you know, involved story about growing up and LGBTQ themes and stuff. And it was one of those things that I think that, God, it was also one of those things that it was a series that had like a somewhat controversial ending.
Yes.
But one that I think that we were both on the side of like, I mean, this is an interesting ending, but I wish that it had been explored more as part of the actual plot of the story.
Yeah.
So.
I think that Blue Flag is, if you are ever in the interest of starting up a manga podcast, or you just want to talk about an interesting thing with your friends, I think Blue Flag is like the perfect sort of series for that, because there's so much discussion that you can have out of it. And in a year where a lot of the things we reviewed were kind of like fighty murder series, it was very satisfying to look back and be like, oh wow, there was that really great romantic series in there that definitely felt like it was such a great series to experience. Even like kind of, even like no matter how you really felt about it, it was one of those sort of like a silent voice where you're just like, I could say like, I want to talk about this series. Basically, I was like, I just want to discuss it. I want to like work through thoughts and just go at it, go to town on it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and there was a lot of like stuff to remember about different characters, not just the main three characters who were pretending to be the main four characters, but one of them got forgotten about a lot. But then there's that whole conversation later on that involves like all the other people involved in it. There's the girl who kind of becomes like the fifth most important character. So just a lot of different things, and like a lot of exposure, kind of discussion on how bullshit the politics of high school are.
Yeah.
Which it turns out, I think, is very universal because, yeah. Then we got to Basilisk. Basilisk was the series about real ninjas, which basically meant that it was about...
I always forgot that's how it was sold to us. And like the first thing they do is use superpowers.
It was about like some real ninja clans, and then I think almost everything else was made up about it. Like the Romeo and Juliet plot and the superpowers and everything. And I know that we had a good time discussing it, but we were both like, this is stupid.
I remember being more positive than you, maybe exclusively because it was such a quick read. But I remember the last like 8 chapters just being like, God, when does this fucking end? Why does this dude keep coming back?
Yeah, it was dumb. It was, I think it was like indisputably dumb.
I'll say this. So like, before we even get to like the rest of these series, I think by the process of elimination, Basilisk will probably be like, it has to, I think, maybe be on my worst series of the year. If not, it would have to be at least in consideration. And that's almost exclusively just because so many of the other series we talked about, I really liked or had some kind of feeling or thought on. Like, I don't know if Basilisk necessarily makes the list, but the idea that like, it might be one I would. And I was like, if I came away and you asked me to like, what's your thought on Basilisk? Like, generally positive. Like, there's some years where like, we read I don't even have a top 3 because I'm just like, I don't know. I like one series this year or something like that. This year where I honestly, in another year, Basilisk probably could have made the top 3. Like, that's how much, like, I don't actually have that negative opinion on it.
Then we talked about Dead Mount Death Play.
Nick, every year.
I knew this was going to be it.
Every year, there's one series that when I look over the list, I'm like, the hell is that? And this year, it was Dead Mount Death Play, where I was like, what the did we read some, like, gothic wrestling manga or something like that? And then I looked it up, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess I remember that. And I moved on.
Yeah, pretty much. This was the series that starts off with like a demon lord, Aku fighting a bunch of holy knights, essentially.
The reverse isekai is the easiest way I can remember it.
It is pretty much a reverse isekai. The demon lord gets reincarnated in the modern world as like a preteen kid with some of his demon powers intact, not all of it though. And it's just about him falling in with like a group of assassins, including a really weird fan service girl that gets killed immediately and turned into a zombie by him. And there's a guy who's like their tech guy and he flies drones around and stuff. I don't really have any positive or negative feelings about this series. It was, even though I remembered what it was when I saw the title, the most forgettable series that we've covered this year for me.
I would say, because like I'm thinking back on it and I'm like, it had a couple decent moments. But I will say the thing that like still strikes me on this series, this has got to have the worst title of any series ever. Because like as I'm thinking on it, Dead Mount Death Play, and I'm like, so little of that says anything about this series. Like I truly, maybe if this series had an even slightly different name, I'd probably be more favorable to it. But that name really dooms it for me. But again, in another year, there would be a far less memorable series than even that. Like, the fact that I can still pick out what it is when you say, like, reverse isekai. Meanwhile, like, if you go up, you're just like, oh, hey, you remember fucking... oh, God, I can't even remember what one of them is, but, like, a certain scientific railgun. I'm just like, oh, is that even a thing?
A far more famous series.
I panicked. I couldn't...
Or maybe like one of the many, many different like scumbag romances that we've read. You know, like I can name like I can't even name the one that.
What the fuck's House of Sun?
That's one of the bad romance ones, I think.
Okay, there you go. You could be a House of Sun.
Yeah. All right. Then we did Ron in the Grey World, about the girl who was the daughter of a very powerful sorceress. I think that overall we had good things to say about it, but there was the disclaimer of there's some really creepy stuff with this guy who's way older than Ron, who is romantically interested in her, and like the more you think about it, the worse it gets. But overall, if you put that aside, it's like, you know, there is a lot of really good stuff in this series, and there are some really admirable characters. It's just that guy is a very central part of the plot, and it's impossible to get around it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great way to sort of explain it, where it was one that, again, this should have been one of the worst series on the year, but, like, as it gets to the end, I remember being so excited about everything else in the series that I still end up with generally good feelings on Ran in the Grey World. So, you know, that's one where I'm like, man, that beginning is weird, and I do wish I had had a heads up about a certain couple of things in the series, but otherwise, it's actually kind of a very fun and magical series. Again, towards the end, not at the beginning.
What's the opposite of front-loaded? Backloaded?
Yeah, backloaded.
Okay.
Burying the lead. Yeah.
It's just not nearly as fun to say.
No.
Then we did Black.
What if we call it butt-loaded?
Butt-loaded.
It's kind of the back, right?
I think that calls to mind another genre of manga. Anyway, Black Butler was the next one we did, and I think that it was one that we both came away much more positive than we were kind of expecting from reputation alone, basically. It's still not something that I feel like I want to go back to or anything like that. But what I did read, it was like, all right, yeah, this is pretty cool, and I see why people are into it. So,
yeah, this was one of those ones I was really, really glad I ended up reading, because now I know what this is, and it's completely changed how not only I interpret the series, but also how I would discuss it if it comes up in conversation again.
And, there were some plot elements that I really liked how it got to a point late on when it was just really crazy. And I think that was past the point that you had actually read. So,
yeah.
Then we did our series for Sadistic September, which was Codebreaker. And yeah, it was bad. I don't think there was a single character in that entire series that was likable in any way. The plot was stupid. It was garbage. There were a lot of parts of it that were just like, I don't even know if it was necessarily offensive in content, but it was offensively bad. Like, and there was some stuff that was offensive in terms of like content and tone. Like the whole thing with like all the dead women that were put in the underground club, and then they decided to kill them all because, why not?
Yeah, there's a lot of those moments in there. Codebreaker was one that it's one of the worst Sadistic Septembers, in the same way it's also one of the best ones, because it's so stupid that it makes for a good conversation. But I don't feel like I'm on an FBI list now that I've read it.
Right.
So I definitely...
I took a big bullet last year. It's like, don't worry, guys.
But I think I have fun with Codebreaker. I will always be able to remember that there's a character in the series who is solely known as He Who Must Be Sought. There's no official name for that character, despite the fact in the lore he does have a name. Just no one knows it or has said it.
So stupid, so pretentious, so edgelordy, and it doesn't even make internal sense. I remember the big problem that I pointed out was the fact that they're supposed to be the people who break all the rules in order to enforce justice, but they're part of an organization that has rules. And it was just stupid bullshit.
Oh man, I hate it.
But then we got into some fun stuff, because we did our Halloween month. We had Ace on to talk about Ghost Reaper Girl, and that was a series that I think we both had plenty of fun with. It's not a series that I've really been keeping up with in the meantime, but the stuff that we read, hey, it was a fun little couple chapters to get to know the series, and I think that it exceeded expectations for us when we heard like, oh, it's the Rosario vampire guy doing it. So.
I have been keeping up with Ghost Reaper Girl, and it's been pretty good actually. It's still been very, very entertaining. So I'll say that.
Then we went into stupid stuff with a school Mermaid, with the series about the
stupid stuff. How dare you?
It was genius. My mistake. The series where if you go into a school at night and you recite something from a book, then these girls in swimsuits will show up, and they're like ghosts, kind of, and you have to try and kill one and drink its blood, and that will like let a guy fall in love with you if you drink one that's got the right letter on its suit. And if you don't drink a mermaid's blood, then you turn into a mermaid yourself, which basically means you turn into a ghost that's watery, sort of. And then there were just kind of some short stories based around that. And then eventually it was like, no, there's like lore and a whole ongoing plot that happens like halfway through the series. It was pretty dumb. I remember you liked it a lot less than I did.
Yes, so. I remember it being very dumb, and I didn't even get to the part where there was an actual narrative at that point. So,
and I say you liked it a lot less than I did, and I did not like it very much. It was just kind of like, there's a couple things that are good, and I wouldn't recommend it. So.
Yeah.
But then we capped off Halloween month with Mieruko-chan, the girl who sees, the story about the girl with some sort of psychic abilities that allow her to see ghosts, and she tries to deal with this by ignoring them so that they won't realize that she can see them and deliberately haunt her. And we both really, really liked this story. It was one that kind of started off just sort of comedic. It never lost, its all of its comedy, but it kind of grew a bit more dramatic over time as it really explored the idea of, hey, what happens with this girl who's got to just kind of deal with this pressure all the time and has to pretend that she's okay 100% of the time. And it was really, really good.
Yeah. I think this is one of the ones that I will remember the most for the year.
Then we did Cells at Work.
It was there.
I still don't have.
Oh, I'm so angry I stepped over on you on that. Oh, that's gonna make me sad now because that was the best transition for Cells at Work.
Still don't have anything to say about it. Then we did Genkaku Picasso, which was an interesting, story at certain points. I think that it had a couple cool things to say about dealing with grief. Had some flaws, but overall felt pretty good about it.
Yeah, I think Genkaku Picasso was another really, really surprising one.
That was the one about the artist whose friend dies at the beginning of the series, and from that point on, she seems to take on this sort of like pixie appearance that only he can see, and he has to use his art and ability to dive into people's hearts in order to help them work out personal problems.
Now,
stuff.
Nick, in the interest of keeping this topical, I have come to understand this is also very similar to the plot of Wonder Woman 1984, where she also sees somebody who is dead, but sees them in a different form. Does the rest of the world also offer up their wishes in Genkaku Picasso to save everybody?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe Wonder Woman's not a very good movie.
I haven't heard good things about the new one. So.
No. Well, I didn't like the first one, so I've been very skeptical of the fact that I haven't heard anything good on the second one. I was like, I was not with the norm on the first one, so I definitely don't want to check out this one.
And the last series that we covered as recommendation this year was the Quintessential Quintuplets, that harem romance story about a tutor who's tutoring 5 different girls. But in this one, they're quintuplets, and it was pretty all right. I think that we were kind of like, yeah, it's all right, but liked some of the characters more than others, and had a lot to say about like, well, I don't think that this was a very consistent thing in terms of quality and stuff like that. But we read it; it was fine.
Yeah, I think that's one, again, probably similar to the Mob Psycho. There's a bunch of people who listen to our podcast who are much, much more excited about it than we are. And as such, they kind of came away with like, I'm glad you guys liked it, but I wish you had liked it more. But even then, I think that's still one that I wouldn't say was a bad series or anything even close.
No. I think the most amusing response that we got was some people disagreeing with our thoughts on who the best girls were.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, waifu culture's a fucking thing, yeah. I'm sorry we don't find fucking Yotsuba or whatever her stupid fucking name is to be entertaining.
Yeah, that was the one that we... But, yeah. So it was nice to kind of dip our toes in, I guess, on that one. If we had to cover, a popular harem series, I'm glad it was that one. But that was it for all the stuff that we covered as recommendations. One thing I didn't really mention was that, I'll get to that when we talk about just our recap series, because that qualifies.
So we'll just real quick, I guess, give some of our favorites. So I'm going to real quick mention what the audience favorites were. Their least favorite, number 3 was Actage. I thought that got taken off. But number 2 is Basilisk. Which, again, I don't really think was that bad, but all right. And their number 1 is Codebreaker, which makes sense. I think that's going to be everyone's. Their favorite series, though, their third favorite was Blue Flag. Second was Mob Psycho 100, and their favorite series was Zatch Bell.
So a lot of people nostalgic for that Zatch Bell. And it was a good series. So first, I've got my list.
All right, go for it.
So So I know that I said that I didn't, hate this series, but in terms of like just looking back on it, the quality of it that I feel in my gut, School Mermaid is my number 3 worst.
Mm.
Uh, Basilisk is my number 2 worst, and Codebreaker is my number 1 worst. Like it had to be Codebreaker. It could not be anything else. And because with the other two, I was like, all right, this is dumb, but I don't really care. Codebreaker was like, okay, no, this is just garbage. It's shit, and it makes me angry how bad this is and how dislikable all the characters are. It had to be that.
Yeah, I think mine probably goes. I think it's going to be Cells at Work as my third least favorite, and then School Mermaid, and then Codebreaker. I don't, as I said, I think I could find enough fun in the idea of talking about Basilisk that it doesn't make my worst. But Cells at Work is one where it's just like, it was there and existed. And I generally have kind of made it clear that I will take bad but entertaining over boring any day.
I mean, a previous year, I named Fairy Tail one of my favorite recommendations just because it meant that we got to discuss it after that point.
Hey.
And I never thought that Fairy Tail was a good series, but I've had a ton of fun talking about hero stuff with you. So
I was gonna say, and it's not like Basilisk is making my top 3 favorites or anything like that. So
right. All right, so then I guess we'll get into our positives then. Our favorites.
Yeah.
You said it was what, Blue Flag and Mob Psycho and Zatch Bell?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so my favorite, I think I'm gonna start and I'm gonna say Blue Flag. I'll agree with the audience on that. Then I'll say my second. I'm gonna give it to Zatch Bell. But my favorite, I think, this year was Mieruko-chan. I really, really adored that series. I'm still trying to occasionally keep up with it. It's hard just because I forget about it. But it's one of those series that, like, when I remember it, I kind of just smile. I'm like, oh, man, that thing was really fucking good.
So I had a lot of difficulty deciding this. Pardon me. In terms of, like, acknowledging the quality of it, I almost... Oh, God, sorry.
You're good.
I almost put Black Butler down as my number 3 favorite because, like, it's not really my speed, but I acknowledge, like, okay, this is, like, good. And I definitely now see, after, like, a decade of deliberately avoiding this series, acknowledge, okay, I see what people see in this. And it's pretty good. But in terms of, like, what I actually took away from a series, my number 3 is BEASTARS.
Okay.
It's a series that I did go back to and read after we had taken as a recommendation. The ending of the series isn't phenomenal, but still am glad that I got introduced to the series. And after I read the manga, I also watched the anime when it came out on Netflix. Looking forward to the second season of that coming out. So I think in terms of, like, maybe this series, like, overall might be of worse quality than the other, but from what I took away from it, I think I have to put it on the list over Black Butler. So
that's fair.
My number 2 is Blue Flag. I thought it was really good. Just really had like a big, like, oh wow, that's so I had to put that down. But number 1 for me is it's also Mieruko-chan. Like, I loved that series, and it was the most surprising thing that we discussed.
Yeah.
And I haven't been keeping up with it, but when I realized I hadn't been keeping up with it, when I was getting ready for us to talk about this stuff tonight, I realized, like, oh, I need to go and read that when we're done, because, like, I really want to, see what happens next.
It's so usually Halloween month is this thing that I'm like, why don't we just get rid of it? We never really enjoy most of the series we talk it, and then it's like, oh, Mieruko-chan, let's keep it in for next year. You never really know, guys. Hey, you know what? That's what this is all about, discovering new things, right?
Yeah. Every now and again we get one of those series that's like, the one about the zombie apocalypse girls.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, there's some weird ones in there. All right, so, well, let's move on to talking about the series from our recap. And we're going to specifically talk about the series that we discussed this year. Although I guess we should start with the series we've dropped or came out this year and we decided not to keep in the recap. Do you want to go through those real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one on there is Undead Unluck. And I have said this before, and I will say it countless times. It will not stop fucking with me that Undead Unluck came out this year. It feels like some like the Berenstein shit. Like it feels like some Mandela effect. Like, what are you talking about? No, Undead Unluck came out like last summer or something. There's so much stuff that's come out in Undead Unluck that it is like unfathomable in my mind that it's less than a year old. So it will not stop fucking with me.
I started very close to the beginning of the year, I think.
Yeah, I think it must have been
it in Mashle, I think.
Yeah, it's at some point around there. But I will say, Undead Unluck is a series that we discussed. We did not like the first 3 chapters of, particularly, and that's actually the biggest issue with the series. Is I will say, hey, Undead Unluck is very, very good now. It is a very creative series. It has a ton of very cool moments, but the first 7 chapters are really tough to get through because there's some real gross implications with a couple things going on. So you got to watch out for that, more or less. But it actually has gotten significantly better. The characters are all really good. The main love story relationship is maybe the best in Jump right now, to be honest, especially now that We Never Learn is done. So I'll say that for it. If you
no more Yuika Kirisu. I mean,
well, that's the one true path, Nick. That's why I was saved till the end.
We should all be so lucky to experience love like that.
Yeah. But I will say that if you're into reading a cool battle manga, Undead Unluck will not steer you wrong. It has been very good in that fact, and it really has done a lot in a year. I think that's the part that keeps making it so difficult for me to process that it was this year. There's been 4 big arcs already in the span of a single year. So, keep that in mind. Then Guardian and the Witch, which is already out of Jump.
Yeah, I think we made the right call there.
Yep.
It was not fantastic. I remember that there were a couple of things that were just kind of details that I liked about it. But it was about a girl who basically had been kind of genetically tampered with in order to make her a magical weapon of mass destruction, essentially. And when it was time for her, she was getting too dangerous, and her bodyguard was told to assassinate her. He instead decided, no, I'm going to keep on protecting her. And so they tried to escape together. Also, her handmaiden went with them and was a major character. And things just got even weirder after the first 3 chapters after they got away. They fly around in the most awkward way possible once they gain that ability. Just the 3 of them are they're like a space shuttle when it has the rockets on the bottom of it. In terms of their arrangement, it's so weird looking, and just wasn't a very good, memorable action Shonen Jump series. So we dropped it, and it was done at chapter 16. So
yeah, I was gonna say most of the series that we'll be discussing in this part right here are, in fact, all of the rest of them are still running. So it's a pretty weird scenario when you think about it. There's actually been very few drop series, and the ones that did drop, we actually kept in the recap basically all the way through. Moriking would be the next one, the bug battle series / comedy series about a hunky guy who is the king of the forest, and it's fine. It's fine.
It's a comedy series that's not especially funny.
Nope. Speaking of comedy series that aren't particularly funny, Hard Boiled Cop and Dolphin is next.
Oh my god. I treasure the time that I forget that series exists, Chris.
Legitimately, there are points where I almost enjoy Hard Boiled Cop and Dolphin. Every so often there is a chapter that is legitimately good, and then the next week does absolutely nothing that is the same. There was a chapter that was all about Choco breaking a vase. So she makes up a lie, and she's like, oh, a cartoon character broke it or something like that. And basically a magic wish kind of thing happens, and this giant cartoon character version of it comes out, and she has to admit her lie for it to stop attacking. It's a very sweet thing of this little girl having to admit to her father, I lied, I broke the vase, please don't be angry at me. I don't want you to and I was just oh wow, this is really, really good. And then the next week it was the officer whose breast is too big has to shop for a bigger shirt or something. And it's just like, why? Why is this always so dumb and goes to the worst stupid shit after this? So
I hate every storyline involving her. Like I've occasionally will actually like look at a chapter when you bring up like, oh, it was really bad this week. I don't know why. And just like that one chapter where like she has to like bribe guys with her boobs in order to get them to save someone who's literally going to fall off a cliff and die. It's just like, this is so stupid. Like it's one of those things that's like, this is such a bad view of women, but also such a bad view of men. Like
it's just bad. It's such a stupid
bad for everyone.
It's just so dumb. Hardboiled Cop and Dolphin is one of the more frustrating series that's currently still running because it will likely continue on for a good while longer. But I don't know if it's indicative of the quality whatsoever. Following that, we have Me and Roboco, which is another comedy. This is one that you're not a huge fan of.
When I had to read more of it in order to put it in jump date, by that point, because like it came out like at the very beginning of July, so there was a good amount of it that was out by the time that I actually talked about it in the video, and it was like, all right, you know what, I gotta get it because like it's a gag series, but you know what, it's willing to do a bunch of different shit, so yeah. I'll definitely give it that.
I enjoy Me and Roboco a lot. It's probably one of my like top 6 or 7 series in Jump right now. At least it's one of the ones I look forward to the most. Even then, I still admit there are chapters that are not very good, and there are some times where it's just going to be referential. And if you're like, I just don't want to be like, there legitimately the last chapter was one long giant parody of the Promised Neverland, like in every way, like to the point the author was like, you should probably read the Promised Neverland before you read this chapter. And like, it's one of those ones, I just like how shameless it is and how much it'll go out of its way to be foolish.
Well, they wrote the Promised Neverland gag series before they did Me and Roboco. It's like, did you not get your fill when you were doing the official one?
So there's that one. After that, Phantom Seer, we dropped that one. It's fine. It's the series that we read, and each week I'm like, is this being canceled? Because it is sped through a lot of development. But if it ended up sticking around for another 50 chapters, I would not be sad.
That's a series that I feel bad about because, like, I look at it and I'll read a chapter every now and again. I'm like, this is really close to being really good. Mm-hmm. And it just never gets better.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because I would like it if like we got, another flagship kind of series of that ilk so that everyone else would stop trying to make one. So it's like, all right, we found the replacement for Demon Slayer. We don't need another one now. Submit different things now, please.
Yeah. I'll be very curious to see what 2021 looks like in terms of series that are released. Then we have High School Family, Nick's favorite series. Anti-humor the series.
It's just the least funny thing I have maybe ever read. Like, it's bad. It's so bad. And it makes no sense.
Then we have Our Blood Oath, which is just worse Phantom Seer.
Worse Phantom. That's still going.
Yeah, it's still going. Now I should note, A Gravity Boys is the next series that's ending. I think they announced there's like maybe 1 or 2 weeks left of it, so there may be other cancellations happening, but I'm not certain how many there are. If there is another series ending, I want it to be Our Blood Oath. I really wish I could say that there is something enjoyable to Our Blood Oath, but there just isn't for me. Which is a shame. But then we have Build King, which we have to. What's up?
Yeah. Reading.
I am still reading. I did make the constitution that I said, okay, I am okay with this. But I will say you are missing nothing by not reading Build King. It is not a particularly good series. It is Toriko, but you change the food nouns to building nouns, and it's more or less the same thing.
All right.
All right, and then we wrap it up with Sakamoto Days.
Which is your favorite manga, Chris. It's... I haven't really kept up with the series. This is going to be another one of those that just kind of like just fades into the background for me as I just kind of like it didn't really hook me very well. I thought that the premise was the most interesting thing about it, and there are some striking promotional things, but the more of it I read, the less I liked it. And so instead, the biggest positives I take from it are just the rants you had about it. So
Yep. Well, it is what it is. Anyways, the one last thing I'll mention, Ninja put all of the like one shots in here. I'm not going to go through those one by one, but I will mention Burn the Witch season 1 also happened this year.
Yes. And we got after it was over, we got Teching 101 on to talk about it. We had a nice discussion, and we found out just how innocent our boy Teching is, that he didn't realize that one of the characters was clearly a Nazi and stuff like that.
You're like, oh, my sweet baby. No.
But Burn the Witch was definitely one where it was like, all right, this is very stupid Kubo stuff, but you know what? Glad it's here.
Yes.
I'm just glad that we get to talk about Kubo series again. And by the end of it, there were actually some legitimately good things about Burn the Witch that made me feel like, hey, I would like to see more of this kind of stuff and just like be able to enjoy it. But even if I don't enjoy Burn the Witch, at least when it comes back, it'll be weird and it'll give us some stuff to enjoy talking about.
Yep.
So,
all right. So with that, we're going to start going through the series. We actually kept in the recap all the way either to the conclusion, to their natural ending, or they're still running in the magazine.
Which means
we have to see if Nick can guess where they were at the start of the year. This actually,
I don't think I still have my cap and gown from when I graduated. Otherwise, I would go and find it and be like, I'm smart.
This might actually be an easier year because a lot of the series in the recap started this year. So there's only like 6 or 7 series you actually had to guess. So,
Yeah, but I got to remember the ones that we haven't talked about in forever where they were.
That's true. All right. So we'll start with Ayakashi Triangle. You don't have to guess where this one was. It started this year.
Yeah. No, it started in like, June, I think it was, of this year.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Cool.
Yeah, this is actually, I think this is one of the more relevant series to talk about, though. This is a series that when we first discussed it, there was a lot of strong thoughts. I think there are still a lot of strong thoughts about this series, and particularly how it handles the main concept of a male character in a female character's body. It was one that definitely had the potential to be problematic, and still does become problematic kind of often. But has also shown an ability to tell a more interesting story. So it's one that I kind of trepidatiously enjoy.
It's definitely one of those that I feel like you can't just say, oh no, this is actually a pretty good manga, and insist on people looking past that potential problem, because while I think it is a good example of a kind of action-y series that has some nice, character relationships in it, it's also one of those things that it's like, look, this runs in Shonen Jump. It is providing the fan service. That is one of its main features. That's not me being prudish. That is just me acknowledging that some people do have hangups about that and cannot look past them. And if you do look past them, the way that it handles gender roles and transgender issues does definitely leave something to be desired. And when they're a focus of the story, really can kind of hold you back on just saying like, no, this is good. It's one of those kind of things that you kind of have to give it credit for ducking problems more than actually handling them well. So it's something where at first I had a very instinctive like, no, this really kind of pisses me off that this exists. And over time I've come to realize, no, this is actually a good series, but that comes with very strong caveats. So.
All right. Now we're actually going to get to the first series. You actually have to tell me where it was at the start of the year, Nick. Black Clover. Okay. Where was Black Clover at the start of this year?
Oh. Well, I feel like we've been on this arc for quite a while. I know we had the time skip this year. I'm going to say that this was when the Golden Dawn got attacked, and we were really excited about how Yuno was developing as a character.
Yeah, that's pretty much spot on. It was Yuno rushing off to fight to save the Golden Dawn, and then Zeno confronting Vengeance, basically.
Okay, so like it was basically just after we had the whole Yuno finding out he's royalty, basically.
Yeah,
so.
I think that ended last year, basically, and then this year was dealing with all that. So yeah, I think you nailed that one pretty damn much on the head. So good job. Black Clover, I think, has been much better this year in comparison to several years as well. I used to dread reading Black Clover, and sometimes I still do. Sometimes it's still not great, but I think far more frequently I have been receptive to reading Black Clover and enjoying it. And that is something I greatly appreciate.
Yeah, I think the main thing has just been that this dark triad having set up like, hey, this is what they did in order to impact this heroic character, and has really gotten us invested in those characters, which is more than I can say about any investment that I've had in basically almost any character in all of Black Clover for the several years that it's been running up to this point. So
yes. All right, let's talk about Bone Collection, Nick. Everyone's favorite series.
This started this year.
Yes.
This was the troll series, like that you deliberately tortured me with.
Can I note this though? I get things wrong a lot. I'm very often not a correct or very insightful person, but I 100% called that Bone Collection was going to be fucking garbage since the first chapter.
No, it took a little bit for me to. I think it took 2 chapters for me to realize it, because the first one it was like, all right, this Kazami guy is kind of a stupid idiot who is way too focused on his porn collections and stuff. But the first chapter did at least showcase that he had some admirable traits when he was willing to help out Pyra. The idea that he was an exorcist that was terrible but could use her power was an interesting gimmick. And, you know, it was a nice kind of, hey, powerful demon girl shows up for the, you know, exorcist guy to cooperate with. It's a nice straightforward setup. And then it just got worse immediately. The stuff with the brother... and then it just kept on getting worse. And then I was so ready to get out of there by the time chapter 3 was done. And then you cashed in your veto in the bank. And I was so mad. And it kind of just became a highlight / lowlight of our show while it was running. Just how bad it would be. And then there was the Milk Boy chapter, which was actually legitimately pretty good, and I think was close to being the best chapter of the week.
Yeah, there was a real bad week where I was like, I think Milk Boy and Bone Collection could take it this week.
And then it was like, no, it's all right, it's bad. It just kept on getting worse. And then the finale was so stupid, it was kind of amazing. So.
It's great. It is a series that died in the flaming wreckage of a bad year where most stuff somehow continued on in the magazine despite itself. So it kind of rings for just how bad of a series it was, and I will forever appreciate what it was to our recap. It's like half of the emojis in our fucking Discord still.
Oh yeah, it was a very like memeable series because of how garbage it was. There are so many, we got so many good quotes and like episode titles from that show. People in the Discord still talk about the bone bus from the last chapter because that's such a silly, like, and of course, you know, the bone, you know, thing. But then there was just, now Pyra can fight. It's like, wait! No! She's been beating people up this whole time!
Now Pyra can fight!
Oh. And like, even if you go backwards, it's like, I guess she didn't ever actually attack any of the demons that came against her. Yeah, but she's a very violent, mean woman.
All right, we'll move on here. Nick, where do you think Boruto was at the start of this year?
Oh boy. Especially the monthly ones are going to be especially difficult. As like I have no idea where Spy Family was, for example. Boruto is an especially odd one because like this part of the series it feels like we've been on for forever.
Mm.
So I want to say that it was the one where Kawaki was kind of like being forced to work with Boruto's squad. I don't know if the thing where they fought the really big guy was the beginning of this year or last year, but that's what I'm going with. It was that's where we were. They were fighting the big guy.
Boro, yes, that actually was exactly where we were. It was the first, like the start of the Boro fight, basically. I think it ended with Sarada figuring out his weakness, basically.
Oh, that's the thing. Boruto's not actually completely monthly, is it? Is it
Not it is monthly, but I never know when it's like it doesn't feel regular sometimes in how it comes out, so I don't
like
know.
a World Trigger is always the beginning of the month, but Boruto sometimes isn't.
Yeah,
so.
I feel like Boruto kind of sometimes comes in and out with like different points. But I probably just don't care about Boruto enough to memorize when it comes out. It probably is something like Boruto comes out on the 8th every month or something like that. I'm just like, whatever. All right. Chainsaw Man, Nick. Vroom. Where was Chainsaw Man? Oh, I guess we should say what we thought about Boruto this year. It was fine. Nick,
It was fine. It was fine.
Okay.
It started off on a high note, and there was a lot of cool stuff with Kawaki, but this fight with Ishiki I think has been largely underwhelming, even though it ended on a pretty cool note last time.
Yeah. Chainsaw Man.
I know that we started doing Chainsaw Man not very long before the end of last year, so I'm gonna have to guess that we were in the midst of Reze the Bomb Devil stuff. Do you want me to be more?
No,
we were right past.
Reze was dead and gone. This was actually the start of the assassination arc stuff, where the different assassins came in, Santa Claus and everything. We were introduced to the 3 brothers at the end of the chapter, and kind of like intrigued by the new, like introduced to the new theme of like, hey, a bunch of assassins are going to be coming after Denji, kind of thing.
From a very general point of view, I'm glad that it was Chainsaw Man that I didn't know, because the pacing on that is like, you can forgive me.
Oh yeah, like if you had to think where was Chainsaw Man, you're like, well, everything happened this year, so I don't know where it started. Chainsaw Man also ended this year, although ended I guess should be in quotes. We know that there's going to be a Chainsaw Man Part 2 of some fashion. I really wish Chainsaw Man had a better sequence of an ending, because I think for a long part of it, I really, really enjoyed Chainsaw Man, and I have a lot of good feelings about it. But the last maybe 4 or 5 months of Chainsaw Man were either too boring for me to really enjoy, or they were so chaotic and disjointed that I have a difficulty really understanding it. So it's just, that's it. Like that in my mind, I'm just like, I wish Chainsaw Man had been more consistent to the conclusion, because I probably would really consider it for my series of the year. But like we've talked about it before, like the entire point where Denji is Chainsaw Devil and there's 6 straight chapters of him just murdering everybody over and over again, and then it just kind of ends, and you're just like, I mean, I get it, but just didn't do it for me the same way I wanted for the series.
It's one of those kind of things that's more fun to just kind of go through when it happens, but then if you digest all of it, it kind of leaves you with a feeling of emptiness, because you kind of can see that if it had been planned out a bit better, then it would probably been overall better.
Yeah.
Probably what happened was they wanted to, move some stuff around and shuffle up the lineup order, and there had already been the plans to move it to a different magazine, so they probably changed the timetable a little bit. I think that, people talk about that all the time when they talk about a series that ends in a kind of weird, unsatisfying way. I know that when Bleach ended, we were of the opinion that maybe it had been pressured to end, and then it turned out, no, probably what happened was Kubo was just burnt out, and he was trying to end it by a very particular time in order to, get the nice, clean, chapter 600 or whatever it was, 15-year anniversary ending. And it just kind of like where he was when it was time to wind it down wasn't a very good position to wind it down. And so he had to kind of crank things up. Stuff like that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know what the case is with Chainsaw Man. I just know that our reaction to it was not great when it was actually ending and when we knew it was ending. So
yeah.
And part 1 was ending.
And this is also, we'll talk about it, I think, a little bit more with certain other series, but this is also a series that may have changed a little bit just by the nature of us having to read it week to week. Maybe that wasn't the ideal way of digesting Chainsaw Man's final arc, saga. I don't really know what you call it. Sequence, I guess. But I still come away with good thoughts about Chainsaw Man, and I will be intrigued to see what Chainsaw Man Part 2 is, if it happens, because I think Fujimoto has shown I don't believe anything until it actually happens. I don't. Yeah. All right. Dr. Stone, Nick, I think this is the hardest one. Can you remember where Dr. Stone was? The miasma that was Dr. Stone this year.
Was it the very end of the fight with Ibarra?
A little bit before that. Well, I guess it depends on what you consider the fight.
The last sequence when it was just down to just Senku and Ibarra.
Basically. Then yeah, like right before that. Basically, it was Senku was survived by everyone using like the hand thing to like pace out the distance, basically. So I think the chapter ended with Ibarra finding out that Senku had set a trap for him in the mobile lab. But otherwise, like right there, yeah.
Well, if you don't want to give me credit for that one,
I mean, it's fine.
About it, I understand. Well, no, just for anyone who's interested in keeping score, I understand if you don't want to give me credit for that one, but I feel pretty good about actually getting that close.
That's extremely close, because if you would ask me this year, I'd be like, holy shit.
They've been in America for forever.
I will say this. It actually made me a little sad when I read what the first chapter was. Is like, I must have had really high thoughts on what Dr. Stone was going to be this year, because that was a great chapter, and that fight with the bar was a great sequence, and everything after that was really exciting. And then if you asked me to tell you like highlights of the rest of the year, Dr. Stone, I'd be like, I mean, Stanley was a pretty cool character. Mm-hmm. I like Luna. Koseki's still alive, so that's a plus in my book.
I think what it comes down to is that we were probably expecting that the stuff in America would be as straightforward as the stuff with the Petrification Kingdom, in terms of they go to a place and then there is a conflict that is resolved there before they go somewhere else. And instead it is turned into the America's saga involves globe trotting to an extent. So you could consider that it's over when they capture Zeno, but it's not really. It's
still going on.
It's still ongoing because Stanley's group is still chasing them. They still haven't 100% resolved the fact that Zeno is clearly not interested in cooperating with them 100%. He just does it when he's curious about something or when it's convenient to him. So we're not actually done with that arc. But even so, like some of this, even removed from that, some of the stuff that they've done has not been very narratively satisfying. The way that the group split up with very little fanfare, honestly. There was a little bit of it, but it really should have been a much bigger thing. And also, like, yeah, there's been some good characters introduced in this whole sequence, like the ones you named. But there's also been some just, like, very forgettable characters introduced as well. Like, you know, those two guys who follow Luna around, or the guy that they had to make the watch is like, he's got a cool gimmick, but that's kind of, you know, there's a lot of people in Zeno's kingdom that I feel like we've seen but haven't really gotten to know. And then of course there's Dr. Chelsea. So immediately that's like three grades down for Dr. Stone for the whole year. So
yeah, I think that's pretty much it. All right. Nick, Eden Zero. Do you remember where that was at the start of this year?
No. Let me try and guess.
It could be anywhere. It could be anywhere in the last 4 arcs.
Oh, God. I feel like we were past the point with Homura and the whole family thing.
but you're not sure, right?
I don't know 100%. I feel like we were past that point, but Eden Zero's arcs are so short, generally speaking. And I don't know what happened after that. Like, I don't know where they went after that one. They got them together. So they decided to be the 4-star. Was it just all the stuff where Ziggy showed he was the bad guy? No, it was the stuff with I forgot. I'm sorry. I completely forgot that there was the big bad guy who was also the DJ.
Drac and Joe.
Drac and Joe. So they were on Drac and Joe's station, I think.
You are right on that. Can you give me...
And I think it was the first time loop, because I think we found out what Rebecca's powers were relatively-ish early this year. So I'm guessing that they had a fight with one of his 4 general guys, maybe? I'm going to guess that they had a fight with Laguna at the beginning of the year. I don't know.
At this point, I don't know if they had started really fighting the different members of the Elemental 4 yet. This was the one, like, self-captures Rebecca, and Rebecca is asked to like hang out with Drac and Joe, and like at the end of the chapter he reveals that he has Lobelia like captured for her, basically as like a prize.
All right, so I think that I was too early, because I think that they encountered Laguna before that.
Yeah, it's
the first time, I mean.
Yeah, this is the first time loop, basically.
All right.
That's pretty good on
I realized, like, wait a minute, Drac and Joe, that was when it was like,
wait,
hang on.
That's the best part, where you're just like, it's after Homora's thing, but before Z, holy shit, there was an entire arc in the middle of that space.
It's so weird that Eden Zero was just like that, where it's just like, hold on, a thing happened and another thing. What else happened? Oh, wait, there was an actually important arc.
They fought one of the Erasion 6 Galactica and defeated him with gravity. Remember, it was a big moment for fucking Weiss. He was also there. Remember, Drac and Joe killed his girlfriend or some stupid, or his mom or some shit like that? And so he was like, I want to be here, and then didn't do anything. Anyways, is there anything to really say about Eden Zero? We enjoy talking about it because it's fun, but it's just noise. I mean,
I think that Rebecca has improved as a character a bit since she's become, the reveal of her powers has caused her to become a bit more active, and also, like, now that she's not just a fame-hungry damsel in distress, you can see a little bit more of her admirable traits. I think that we actually really enjoyed it when she was actually exploring the possibilities of her powers and tapping into her limits and stuff like that. But other than that, not a whole lot positive is there to remark on, especially because, it's like, oh, hey, it's the part of the arc where Elsie is more heavily involved now at the end of this year. And it's like, oh, great. So
yeah. The part of Eden Zero I enjoyed the least is gained a more prominent stage going forward. Huzzah. Yeah. All right, Nick, Kaiju number 8. Started this year. I just meant, what have been your thoughts on Kaiju number 8?
Incredibly positive. I think that there's been like one chapter this entire time where we were just kind of like, I mean, it was all right, but it's kind of disappointing compared to everything else. Been a very, very, very fun series, and I'm really glad that we're reading it. So
yeah, this would be this is probably, I mean, I guess World Trigger's also in that spot, but in my mind, this is definitely one of the like irregular series I look forward to the most. I think it helps that it's kind of like 3 times a month as opposed to once a month like most of the other irregular series, but I definitely enjoy Kaiju number 8 a lot.
Keeps it in your mind, but it's enough to not get burned out. There's just enough of it being spaced out that you always feel a little bit hungry for more. So.
Yeah. And I think just perfect execution in so much it does. I think that's really what I enjoy about it so much. Yeah. Mashle, Magic, and Muscle is another series that started this year.
One of our favorites overall.
Yes, I think this is an excellent series. It's one of the ones I enjoy reading the most. It's usually the one I save for last, even after One Piece. Really? I'll usually, because there's very rarely a time where I finish a chapter of Mashle and I'm disappointed. The worst I can have is just be like, that was an okay chapter. I wish it had been funny or something like that. But there's so many chapters where I'll at the end of it be like, this was phenomenal or something like that. And Ninja gave like a list of all these different little stats, and he's like, Chris's overwhelmingly most like MVP series was Mashle, and it wasn't even close. Like it was pretty ridiculous in comparison, but I really enjoy it. It's just such a great series. So we're just gonna mention this one real quick. Mission Yozakura Family. It was in the recap at the start of the year, and then we dropped it midway through the year. I will say this: I have continued to read it off podcast. I am glad that we've stopped reading it because a lot of very exciting things have happened, and I still have zero enthusiasm for this series. So I know for a lot of people, this has been one of the better series this year. I don't fault you if you believe that. I'm glad that we took it out of the show because we would have only continued to annoy people by not having particularly strong thoughts for the series, generally speaking.
Yeah, I'm sure that there would occasionally be a chapter where we would be like, oh, I kind of liked this, but we're just at a point where we don't really have a lot to say about it. And we were just having less and less to say about it each week before we eventually were just kind of like, all right, something really big happened, and neither of us really care all that much. So maybe we're not fans of this series.
Yeah.
And should stop talking about it. Because that's, at least the most interesting discussions is either when you're very enthusiastically positive about something, when you have a lot to say about something because you've thought about it a lot, or when you really, really hate something and you want to passionately go over that. And Yozakura Family doesn't fall into any of those categories.
It sometimes falls into the latter for me.
Yeah, sometimes a really annoying character shows up and we're like, fuck this guy, I hate this guy, why is he here? But it's not like we're upset that we're being deprived of a really good chapter, because those don't really happen a lot for us.
Some would say the relationship between Tayo and Mutsumi is sparkless and hollow, but you don't, I mean, what are you really gonna do at that point, right? Anyway, it's out of the recap now, and let's talk about My Hero, Nick.
So I hear that there's a pitchforks and torches convention going on outside Chris's house now.
I signed out of the Discord, that way they can't yell at me.
Where was Mission Yozakura Family? Well, that was
Was it in the middle of when every chapter was still like a comedy spy exam?
It was like a one chapter story, I think, almost all the time when it was going on. I don't know. Was it the first time that the one stalker of Mutsumi's got introduced where he had the face mask and stuff?
I don't know when the first one. No, this was actually when the two agents were still involved in the story. The sword agent dude and the other guy.
Oh, we actually kind of liked them a little bit.
Yeah, they didn't really do a whole lot by the end of the year, so you're all good.
That's how Yozakura Family works, is that like characters are introduced and then forgotten about until 20 chapters later when they have another one-off appearance. So,
all right, My Hero.
My Hero Academia, where was it?
Yeah, where was My Hero at the start of the year?
I think that the heroes were like just getting started on invading Ujiko's hospital.
Okay.
Am I right?
They were at they had started the invasion?
They were just going for it.
No, a little bit before that. This was actually it's weird. Ninja gave me the description of the chapter and I'm like, did he miss a part or did that chapter just have no conclusion? This was the 1A students show off their training. Aries Horn is kind of acting up, and then it ends with All Might basically talking about Deku's other quirks.
Okay, so it was kind of one of the preamble chapters.
Yeah.
So I landed a little bit too early.
Yeah.
I guess I just feel like this battle arc has been going on for longer than it actually has, because it has felt endless. So
yeah, I mean, so that's the thing. This series is one of the ones I kind of want to talk about the most, because on one hand, this year is going to be, for better or for worse, defined by this arc, because it has been almost the entirety of this year, this big let's go after the League of Villains, or I guess at that point the Paranormal Liberation Front. And
such a stupid name. Thank God they're going back.
Yeah. For what it's worth, quite a lot has happened by the end of the year. Quite a few characters are dead. Some notable, some not so notable. There's a big feel like the status quo has changed. Some big moments happened. And I genuinely feel like this year would have been more memorable to me. No, I shouldn't even say it like that. I think I will enjoy thinking back on this year more when we aren't recapping it week to week. Because I think this was an exhausting series to read week to week, because so often it felt like things weren't changing, simply because the setting was the same throughout the entire year. A lot of the major characters stayed the same throughout the entire year. Like, Shigaraki is the main antagonist and has basically been a major antagonist of the series since this year, since April or something like that, whenever he finally woke up out of his chamber or whatever. I think this is a series, and I mentioned it earlier, that I will have a different thought on this considering how we digest it for the recap. And I do think I was too harsh on this series throughout the year. I think I've come away thinking there are moments that I should have enjoyed it more that I was too negative on, just because I was like, I didn't like this chapter in this moment and didn't have enough patience to kind of just let the moments develop.
I think that being a fan of the series really helps on this stuff. So that has helped me be overall more positive on this than you. But I have definitely had my problems with My Hero Academia, and we have discussed them at length whenever they pop up. But to your point about appreciating this more when we're not just going through it week to week, I think that there's going to be stuff ahead that will be better because we went through the stuff that happened this year. This is probably going to provide the seeds for more dramatic stuff that happens down the line. This was, a lot of important stuff did happen, but it was not it was still building stuff, even though it didn't feel like it at the time, maybe. Also, I guess that this arc has provided My Hero Academia fans with a big comic crossover event and all the weight that goes with that. And if you liked it, then I guess you'll probably like some event comics. And if you didn't like it, then you probably shouldn't check out event comics. So,
all right, let's move on, Nick, to One Piece. Yep, One Piece.
One Piece, I have a relatively good idea where it was, but I'm not sure if I have this exactly. I think we were just beginning the Odin flashback, because I remember that the end of the Odin flashback was sometime in March, so we couldn't have either been too far into it or too far from getting into it.
Something very specific happened in the chapter at the start of the year. A very specific chapter. Okay. It was the Laugh Tale chapter. The one that ended with the idea of Gold Roger and the journal basically revealing that the final island's not called Raftel, it's called Laugh Tale. And all of them laughed about it.
Oh, right. That flashback was actually very long, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a very, very long flashback. I remember at the time saying to myself, I was like, this is going to make it real easy for Nick at the start of next year because it was such a big One Piece chapter.
Underestimated the length of the flashback.
But I'll say it this time, Nick's definitely going to remember it because next year's going to start with chapter 1000 One Piece, so it shouldn't be too hard. But yeah, it's been some pretty cool stuff. I think One Piece was a very strong year at points, but at the same time, good God, it has been a gauntlet.
People were observing when Chainsaw Man ended that it started while the Wano arc was going on, and now that it's over in Jump, the Wano arc is still going. It's that's just how long we've been here.
Yeah. There's quite a few things where you're just like, good Lord, so much has happened, but at the same time, nothing has happened. If you are a fan of One Piece, I would say this year's probably been better for you than probably in the same way My Hero kind of was. If you really like One Piece, you're probably able to enjoy this year a lot more because there's actually been a lot of very small details that are pretty exciting for the world. But One Piece is also a series that just feels unrelenting at times. I can't remember when the Odin arc ended, if we started a new act or not. I think we did, because
that was right around where the that it was right around there.
I'd like to hope so, because I'm like, I don't think we spent an entire year in one act, but we might have. So we will see. But I think generally One Piece had a very, very good year this year. The Odin flashback in particular, the end of it was I think exceptionally done. Samurai 8, Nick.
Samurai 8. Oh, so I legit miss Samurai 8 being part of the podcast, because it was like always bad, but it was always a tolerable level of bad while also being hilariously incompetent, like in so many different ways. I am pretty damn sure that we were in the midst of God. No, that was the okay, so I have to remind myself that the final part of Samurai 8 was very short.
Yes.
Because it was accelerating, it had to be accelerated towards its conclusion. So I know that we must have been on like the bounty hunter planet place. The one that involved the guy with the fake name.
Super evil Ben, yes.
Yes, Ben, and it was. We were wondering as it was clearly winding down if that guy was going to be made out as the final villain, and then when he wasn't, we were like, "How much longer is this going to go?" Oh, this fight lasted like 2 chapters. And I know that the final betrayal of all that happened this year, because that's made like what the fuck moments lists that people have put up. So Sanda, that was his name. Oh my God. I am going to guess that we got the flashback to Sanda's past, where he found out how like his mom and dad had like killed each other because Ben manipulated them.
Basically right around that point. Ben had his thing stopped. Send the Silent lets Sanda go cut off Ben's head for transport, and the ship is moved and reveals the stupid winky face planet thing.
That was the first chapter of the year.
Yeah.
All right, so I was a little bit late, I think.
Yeah.
So,
look, you already said it. I miss Samurai 8. I wish it was still going. It's just such a joy. Yeah, it was just such a fucking stupid series, and I kind of love it. Great. All right, Spy Family, Nick.
Was this the part where? Oh, I don't have any confidence in this, but was this the part where Anya like discovered the bomb? Well, no, God. I guess that's going to have to be it. I don't know exactly when Bond came in and if Henry Kaninger was a joke we made this year or not.
It was. So you actually nailed it right on the head, pretty much. It was the whole thing with like the getting the dog arc. Anya goes off and like she basically gets intercepted by like the terrorist leader, and then Bond saves her. Woo. So you pretty much got it.
What have you thought about Spy Family this year?
I don't think this has been a particularly strong year for Spy Family. I mean, it's only been like a year and a half old or whatever, but I will say I didn't enjoy Spy Family as much as I did previously. And I think a large part of that is just because it's monthly, so each chapter kind of hinges upon a little bit more. And the fact of the matter was that like tennis arc with Nightfall or whatever, that was just a low point in the series for us. So I still genuinely enjoy it. I still genuinely come away having fun with it. And there have been some, I think, particularly great chapters, essentially. But I did not have the strongest thoughts or feelings towards it this year.
Yeah, people in the chat are pointing out it actually comes out every 2 weeks. But yeah, it does sometimes feel like it only comes out once a month. I don't know. And I think it's partially because there's been a number of times this year where instead of getting a chapter, we've just gotten like an illustration.
Yeah.
So I think that there have been a number of points this year where we've only gotten one actual chapter once a month.
Mm-hmm.
I think that does contribute to feeling like it wasn't as good as last year. It's still been an enjoyable series. I love, just having it around in general, and I'm really glad to see how successful it has been, because I mean, a lot of stuff's come out about like how successful it actually is while having no anime adaptation yet. But it just isn't as good as it was last year. Just, haven't had like as consistently a good time with it. And I think part of that is having longer story arcs more consistently. So there's not like a bunch of, just like really good little chapters. There have been a few, but not as many. We're at a point where like a chapter came out. We're not going to talk about the chapter that came out this week, but it was a really good chapter. I quite liked it. And I'm looking forward to, what the hell happens with this new character and stuff. But it wasn't as good. But I don't like Spy Family overall any less than I did at this point last year.
Yeah.
So,
Nick, let's talk about the Promised Neverland.
So it was bad this year.
What point was its badness at the start of this year?
At what point?
Yeah.
Was it?
What was?
I think we were already pretty fed up with it.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Like, at what point in that blend of badness was it at that point at the start of the year?
In the terms of the plot, I think it was like the end of the fight with Lagrove, the queen, because I don't think the stuff with the other demon sect happened this year. I think that was actually last year.
You're just a tad bit early. The queen was killed at the end of last year, and then the start of this year was basically Ratri taking over, and like kind of like taking over.
What character he was.
I do not know if there has been a series in Weekly Manga Recaps history that has turned my ability to enjoy it on so much of a dime as the Promised Neverland. Like, there's series that had kind of disappointing endings that I just like kind of go along with, but Promised Neverland, like, I've almost ejected it from my consciousness. Like, I every time one of these side chapters comes out, I'm like, I don't care. Every time somebody references it, I'm like, I don't care. People recommend it, I actively am like, no, because the ending is really, really stupid. Like, there's the anime is still going. Like, people are still really excited about it.
Second season's coming out soon.
Yeah. Like, there's actually a lot of really exciting things, but I have zero interest in like thinking about the Promised Neverland anymore. That's how bad I hated that last like year of the series, year and a half.
No, it's been very weird to see it all happen and like see the world realizing what the Promised Neverland like is, as we were at the point in the series where it was just bad and we had just turned on it so much, because literally every time that I saw someone get excited over Promised Neverland for one reason or another, the way the anime plays out, even just like how catchy the opening theme of the first season of the anime is, I'm just like, it's gonna get bad, guys. You're not gonna, you're not gonna like it as much. They all pick up guns and stop being smart.
Yeah, it's pretty much. Yeah, it's a disappointing thing. I wish I could enjoy Promised Neverland, but I just can't enjoy any part of it anymore. Even the parts that were phenomenal, it just all gets ruined because I remember how bad the rest of it is.
Yeah. And even whenever it introduced late on some plot elements that were kind of interesting, it just didn't really do anything with them. Like the one sniper girl, Ash, I think, or something. Aish.
Aish or Ash or something like that.
They explain, like what she's all about, and then like she does nothing. Yeah. And like, so I'm all right. I'm glad we got to know this character, I guess.
All right, Nick, let's talk about Seven Deadly Sins.
Seven Deadly Sins. I think it ended like February or something this year.
Yes, it ended very early on.
So I think that we must have been in the final battle when we began the year. So
actually a little bit before that. This was still when Arthur was fighting against like the monsters of chaos or whatever.
Oh, right. That was a thing.
Although I can't remember if that happened before or after the final battle, actually.
I think that was actually after the final
battle. So that might have been afterwards, yeah. So it was a thing that happened. Because I was like, no, I think you're right. And I was like, there wasn't enough chapters on a weekly basis for there to be a whole long arc after that. So I think there was just like some weird, stupid... Yeah, there was like some weird, stupid, like 6-chapter detour after the like manga was very clearly done to be like, because there was that moment after the final battle where it was like revealed like Arthur's here and Chaos, and we're like, is this gonna be like a side series or something? Like,
are we launching into a new plot arc? It's like, no, there's just one last little plot element we have to wrap up. Anyway, bye, Escanor.
yeah. So yeah, Seven Deadly Sins. It barely counts for this year, but you know, not really a great end of the year kind of a thing that was there. I guess the most important thing I could even say about the Seven Deadly Sins this year is it released a mobile game that was extremely stupidly popular and then fell off the face of the earth and now does like weird as fuck crossovers. I think there's supposed to be like a Stranger Things crossover, like a collab event. And I'm just like, what?
All right.
All right. Time Paradox Ghostwriter, Nick.
Yeah. So this was one that I had very high hopes for. And then right around the time I think that I argued that we needed to, I think that we kind of just like came to the realization of like, all right, this is at the very least going to do something different. So we should keep on talking about it. And then about 3 or 4 chapters after that, it started to get really stupid. As it was like, oh, well, you have to, keep writing this manga in order to make sure that Aino doesn't die. And I was like, yes. And I called it 100% accurately. Yes. I was like, this is either going to make it great or is going to be the most enjoyably stupid shit ever. And it was very enjoyably stupid. And it ended on an emotionless robot being the one behind it all, but it also cried and was clearly like deeply loved Aino and wanted to save her life, but it didn't have emotions, but it cried.
Yeah. Oh man. It's such a fucking joy, but yeah, I'll miss it. I think it's the one I'm the most sad is gone of like the series we picked up and then ended this year. It was just a treasure. Mm-hmm. All right. We never learn, Nick.
So what helps me with this is knowing that each of the girls' arcs was 9 chapters long. Mm-hmm. So
you could do the math on this one.
Do the math. So I think that it must have been when they were gearing up to take the final exam. Like, I think that they might have, it might have been right around the point where like Yuiga like falls down the stairs. That this year it began.
Nick, you had the ability to count, and this is the one you are by far the furthest off.
Really?
It's the ski trip. They're done with exams by this point. Okay. We were like a couple chapters into the Yozakura arc at this point.
That doesn't add up at all because there's 52 weeks in a year, and that was for you. Well, let's see, breaks. I guess it depends on where you start the Yozakura arc.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, come on, Nick. It's only one of the routes. It's not canon. It just naturally transitioned exactly from where it was.
That one was weird because that sequence of events is not just like the Ebony Mermaid Princess or whatever the hell it's called. There was something else that happened that kind of directly fed into that.
It was like the exam, everything like that, and then basically after their exams, there's a chapter where Yozakura officially confesses, and it feels like after that point is when the Yozakura arc starts, but technically it did start before. I feel like there was a chapter that wasn't named the Ebony Shiny Mermaid or whatever.
There were only 45 chapters that we never learned this year. Hold on, 52. Hang on. So we're in... If there are 4 weeks, we never learned must have just had a week off at some point at least. There must have been at least one issue jump where there was just no we never learn. Okay. I'm satisfied with that explanation, but I'm just like, when I know like, hold on, 45, 52, so there's 2 months for stuff to happen, but if I start pairing them away, I'm like, all right, I'm fine with being wrong.
Yeah. As Jackie is mentioning, there were also weeks off from the pandemic.
Yes, so that is part of it, I guess.
All right. What'd you honestly feel about We Never Learn this year, Nick?
So considering that it was all just the endings, primarily I was kind of I just I still feel disappointment that this Tsusui Sensei didn't just like decide on an ending for the series and then just make that the ending. I understand this whole like visual novel element. It's like if all the different sects of the fandom have a different favorite girl, then you want to sell them all a different volume, basically. And I understand that. But it makes it overall a less interesting narrative to read through if you're not approaching it from that perspective, which did not seem to be the point for the other 3/4 of the series, which was disappointing to me. If I look at things purely from the perspective of the manga we just got this year, it's still mostly positive. And looking at the statistics that were brought up to us, I think that like We Never Learn was like one of my favorite series this year, purely in terms of like which chapters I liked each week. And that makes sense when you consider like, okay, we had a very good Asumi plot arc. We had a very good Uruka one. Fumino's was pretty good. The other two, whatever.
They were there.
So I still mostly feel positive about, the stuff that we got. But because the Kirisu stuff and the Ogata stuff were not good in general, that makes me feel like this whole experiment was not really worth it and does not make me any less salty about the inability to decide on an ending and just do it. So,
yeah, I think this is going to be a year where I'm going to have complex thoughts on We Never Learn. We Never Learn had some phenomenally great high points. There's certain chapters in here that I'd be like, these might be the best chapters of the year of any series. Like they were just phenomenal. But there's always going to be kind of this baggage that goes along with it. You're like, even if you ignore the fact that there were other arcs that weren't great, and even if you ignore the fact that there's one that was really problematic, it's just the fact that there was this weird non-committal energy to it that is on one hand very ambitious, but on the one hand just feels so against the idea of it. Just didn't feel right, I guess. It's going to be a complicated one to really process my thoughts on.
It felt like having all 5 of the endings individually devalues each of them, because it's just like, hey, there's one where, this girl hooks up with Yuiga, and it's like it treats them as like, it makes you more acknowledge the fact that they're fictional characters. So, yeah.
All right. World Trigger, Nick. World Trigger! Were they still in the draft?
No. I am thinking that they must have been on that final Rank Wars battle that involved Tamakoma 2. Because I think that Yuiga's big hero moment and also Chika's big finally shoot someone moment happened this year, and they were pretty early this year. Where in the flow of that battle the start of the year was, I have no idea, though.
I'll give you this. A team was eliminated in the chapter. Could you tell me which team?
No.
Okay. It was a Akoma squad. So we were a little bit before. Yuma and Obishima hadn't yet squared off yet. And basically, we still had the Chika moment and Uega moment. Like, there was a lot to still do. World Trigger had a weird year. And I guess it's just, this is just the nature of World Trigger now, where because of Ashiharu's health, chapters are somewhat kind of like a crapshoot as to whether or not they're going to come out, whether or not we're going to get 1 or 2. Sorry, Osamu, not Yuiga. In my mind, they're the same character.
The same character.
You never know if you're going to get 1 chapter or 2 or none. And because World Trigger absolutely refuses to change its pace, no matter what, stuff will take forever. Like, not a lot actually happened this year. When you pull it away, you're like, the rank wars ended. We watched another rank war fight for some reason. We got the huge details about Galapola and Rajimaru and Yotaro, like all that stuff. And then we did a draft. And it's like a lot, but you're like, we have not yet fucking even remotely started sniffing the away team mission yet. It's just not happening yet.
even if we now have a quarter as much World Trigger as we did when it was a weekly series, it's still infinitely more World Trigger than when it was on hiatus because of Ashihara Sensei's health. So I will take what I can get.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I love it. It's still one of my favorite things when I'm like, oh, right, there's a World Trigger chapter this week. And the moment with Osamu is legitimately maybe one of the best moments this year in manga. It was such a satisfying final like payoff. And then finally, Zipman Nick 24 zip.
Yeah. Yeah, that did happen. Zipman premiered like very, very late last year.
Yes.
So we must have been on like chapter 3 or something like that. At the
little later. We were on chapter 5 at the end of last year, at the start of this year.
So I think that chapter 5. I believe that is the one where like his friend's been like kidnapped and the school like gets transformed into a tower that he's got to climb up through.
A little earlier than that. This was the chapter where like he meets that cosplayer girl or whatever.
Okay.
And then it ends with
that was chapter 4. So.
Yeah, you're like at the same point. Yeah. Look, there's not a ton to say about Zipman. It was a kind of fun series, but unfortunately it did not have a very powerful reception and moved to we're getting cancel mode really quickly.
Yeah. There's also one other series that you forgot about, Chris.
What series is that?
Magu-chan.
Oh, I wasn't put in this list for some reason.
It started this year. I think that overall we are both positive on it. I think that I like it a bit more than you do, but it kind of depends on what character is getting the focus in the chapter. And I think that as we've gotten to know the characters more, we've gotten to like most of them a bit better. I say most. There are still some that's like, all right, I don't really want to focus on you, a cult club girl, but
yeah. I will say this. I have turned around because I mentioned before, like some of the stuff I patted myself on the back for getting right. I was very wrong about Magu-chan. There was a point where I was convinced it was getting canceled. I did the whole congratulations joke background thing with it and everything. It's not. It's doing very, very well now. It looks like it's going to be sticking around for at least the immediate future. Who knows? Jump is a very fickle beast, and as 2020 showed us, nothing really should be counted on forever. But it does not look like it's in any danger, and I have come away at the end of the year enjoying Magu-chan significantly more. There was a point where I was kind of almost the like level of like, I don't know, maybe we should just take it out of the recap because there's just not much to say. But I think I have enjoyed it enough now that I'm happy to discuss chapters of it each week.
I think it was basically like when the first volume came out and the people who like cute mascot characters bought it up, that it was like, oh, all right, I guess we should keep this and push it some more.
Yeah.
Glad to have it in there, especially because it kind of changes up the stuff that we get to talk about each week.
So Nick, what would be, or I guess we could save it for the end of the episode.
All right.
Or we could do it here. I don't know. Do you want to do it? Like, what was your series of the year?
I'll go ahead and say what I think my favorite series of the year was.
Oh wait, no, never mind. There is a spot for it in the award, so we'll save it for there.
Okay.
All right. So we'll start with our superlatives. Now there's a whole bunch, and Ninja X3i has done a phenomenal job setting everything up. There is a ton of stuff. There are even like awards that we have no involvement in that there's tons of votes for and tons of stuff. So really
supplemental awards that are voted on by the people in our community. So
yeah, so I would definitely go check those out. Make sure to vote in them too, because there are some phenomenal stuff out there. But that said, let's start by giving out some of our supplemental awards, starting with the best hero in Jump this year.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think that the one that's kind of paired with this one was a lot easier for me to decide on. And I don't know. I'm not very confident in anyone that it could be, honestly. So why don't you go first?
So a bunch of the names that are out there: Mash from Mashle, Odin from One Piece, Osamu World Trigger, Denji from Chainsaw Man, Aki from Chainsaw Man, Magu from Magu-chan. They're all out there. I think the one that strikes out to me, Matsuri from Ayakashi Triangle, the one that sticks out to me over the course of the year would probably be Mash from Mashle. I think MASH has just been such a fun lead to follow, and a couple moments where he really shows off his hero qualifications have stood out. You know, those moments where he'll kick a bad guy and it's so satisfying. I think have been great. Like, if I was to say who's my favorite face this year, it'd probably have been MASH.
I think I'm gonna have to go with MASH too. I'm not quite, I don't know, I'm not quite satisfied with it, but when I think about all the other characters in the series, the only one that I think actually kind of comes close in terms of like a consistently interesting heroic character to follow has probably been Denji. Osamu had the big moment at the start of the year, but World Trigger, there hasn't been a whole lot going on otherwise. So I think that in terms of like the the protagonist character in the manga that we cover that I most associate with the stuff that we've talked about this year, it is MASH.
Yeah.
So
the audience, by the way, picked Odin as their character, as their hero of the year, and I could totally see that. I think that would probably be like my number 2 in terms of everything else. The best new character, Nick. So a character that was introduced this year, someone like MASH, someone like Quanji from Chainsaw Man, Stanley from Dr. Stone, Yamato from One Piece, Kobeni's car from Chainsaw Man. There's a lot. There's a whole bunch of characters here. Sakamoto from Sakamoto Days got a recommendation somehow. Look, there are some actual good ones. I think Suzu from Ayakashi Triangle. A lot of people have really enjoyed her. Knocked, aka Nature Boy Ric Flair from Black Clover, has ended up being a pretty good character. Magu from Magu-chan. Like, I think there have been some very, very good characters this year.
Yeah. Mine is going to be Stanley from Dr. Stone.
Okay.
I think that once we got a look at who he was and got a demonstration of his personality, we were both just like, yes, this guy is a badass. And he carries out assassinations on behalf of his science boyfriend, and that's really, really cool. If I had to choose a runner-up, I would say Yamato. I think that Yamato has been a character that I've been really interested in, but his time hasn't really come yet, unfortunately. We've been given the introduction, we haven't been given the payoff yet. Whereas with Stanley, I think that he's just kind of like, even though he's around and he hasn't been given his final big stand moment or anything like that, he's had more standout moments than Yamato has had. So
I can understand that. I think Yamato is maybe a next year character. I don't think I know enough about Yamato this year to give him my character of the year or new character of the year. Stanley is a really good one, but I think I'm going to go with, if I think about all the characters, I think Suzu's the one that I'm honestly, I think is like the most memorable character of this year is definitely going to be Suzu. I think for me, this like relentlessly, aggressively horny main female character, she just has this distinct energy that nothing else in the series matches. Like, or in the recap, there's just no one like Suzu in any series, and I guess I enjoy having that kind of energy in the magazine. The fact that there was a moment she's like, I guess I have to fuck Matsuri right now, and she starts ripping off her shirt, and he's just like, what are you doing? And she's like, I was hot. And they're just and the author being like, I didn't think I'd have to draw this, but I thought about who she was as a character, and I was like, no, she's that thirsty. Like, it's just something that I kind of enjoy.
In a world, in a genre, I guess, full of characters that you understand why they don't get hooked up with the protagonist early on, it is in a way actually incredibly refreshing to be introduced to a female character who knows what she wants and is willing to go after it while not going to the point of just being a full-on 100% is horny all the time character. It's like she gets into situations where that kind of switch gets flipped and she's like, I'm going for this, and she just does.
Yeah.
So.
There is a tie for the audience's pick with this one. A three-way tie between MASH, Yamato, and Kobeni's car. You knew the meme couldn't possibly end. And I can't be angry because we swarmed the Shonen Jump poll before with honey mustard. So it's all fair.
It is kind of fun to see when memes like that are just like enjoyed by like every part of the fandom, as opposed to like, when My Hero Academia gets joke votes, it's like, Deku's shoe. And it's like, I don't know if anyone makes that joke in the English-speaking fandom, but it's a big thing.
All right. So the best new technique or power. So there's a couple good ones in here. Andy and the way he uses his regeneration to fight from Undead Unluck. Yuma using the Scorpion Pinball. This one I did not understand. Mieruko's Luna. I don't know. I think she spun and cut and like kicked. I don't know why that one.
She crushed someone with her thighs.
Yeah, so that's all people really want out of her, right?
Hurricane Rana, I think, is the exact technique that it's called.
Osamu's trick with the asteroids in there. Denji's power of light move. A couple of Mash's attacks, and then like Nature Boy Ric Flair stuff. I'll be honest, this is a tough year for stuff. It didn't really feel like anybody revealed anything particularly cool. I think I like Andy's use of his regenerative abilities, but I like most of the stuff that's come out since we stopped talking about Undead Unluck, which I feel doesn't really fit the spirit of this award. So if I were to consider everything that's actually seen this year that was part of the recap, it's probably going to be Osamu with the Hound, but that's not really a technique. It was like a one kind of move thing. So I don't know. I don't feel super strong about this.
I am actually going to go with Osamu's Skies and the Hound as the asteroid. In terms of like a memory that I have with a specific like combat technique, that counts as a technique.
Yeah.
Even if it is a moment of deception, that counts in my mind. So.
The audience, by the way, picked Denji's Chainsaw Man Power of Light, where he just set himself on fire with gasoline.
I feel less strongly about that being a technique, but I guess he did have an attack cry for it. So
yeah, he did name it, so
this is the power of light.
All right, so let's talk the best speech, Nick. There are tons, and we cannot name them all. But we've all had access to this, so we've all had the ability to look it over. There are just a ton of speeches. So did you have any that stuck out to you as your favorite?
I really liked I liked when Makima explains what she did to Denji, manipulating him, giving him a purpose and wanting him to have more than just the simplest things in order to tear him back down. I liked Kaido's big speech about how much he actually kind of respected Odin, but you are not worthy. You can't even make the old scar throb, or you can't even pierce the old scar, rather. But my favorite was one that we got very early on in the year, which was the handler Sylvia's speech in Spy Family, where she is talking down to these like college students who've tried to commit terrorism, and she says, "Hey, have you ever killed anyone before? Have you ever been killed before? Have you ever had a limb torn up by an artillery shell? Have you ever heard the sound of bones shattering? Have you ever smelled the reek of rotting flesh? Have you ever found the crushed bodies of your parents and siblings in a pile of rubble that used to be your home? Ever discovered a blown off piece of your lover stuck to a wall? Ever been so hungry you tried to eat tree bark? Ever stewed human flesh in a pot? Ever convinced yourself your enemy was subhuman so you could slaughter them like animals? Ever been so haunted by shame and regret afterwards that you cried till you puked? Ever had friends who did the same and took their own lives? Did you learn nothing about war at your university?" It's a very powerful speech, and something that I think is one of those things that you can like take out of the context of what's happening in the manga, and it's still just as powerful. So.
That's also what the audience picked as their favorite. I'm going to go with one of the ones you mentioned, though. I really, really liked Kaido's speech to the Yakuzaki 9 of just him being like starting with this thing. "I saw Odin in you. I could have let you kill me, but then I remembered that with you people are not Odin. We will never see the like of him again." The specific line, "It is too shallow," has so much weight. Like that, I think, is the moment that has cemented Kaido in my mind. That was the moment he got up and he just fucking cuts off Okiku's arm, and you're like, holy shit, this is fucking real now. It was such a great moment for him. I love it. Like, just even thinking about it gets me excited.
And then he destroys all of them.
Yeah, and he just fucking and it's not, he just fucking crushes them.
Enough of this. All
right, Nick. So let's, maybe my favorite award of the whole year.
It's a great award, yeah.
The biggest what the fuck moment of the year. So we're going to actually go through all of these because there's so many, And I think we'll always know where the moment happens because it's usually the one we start laughing at the most.
Yeah.
But the entire, trying to get all the way to the front here. So start with the pointless reveal of the winking face in Samurai 8, where the planet, over the course of 3 pages, reveals it's a big stupid winking face.
It's a very literal what the fuck moment because you're just like, what the fuck?
What the fuck's the point of this? Who cares that the planet's got like a winking face when you view it from this particular angle? There was also a moment in Samurai 8 where after ranting...
Samurai 8 nominations on here, yes.
After ranting how gullible Sanda and his parents are, Ben immediately trusts him and is immediately betrayed by Sanda again after having Sanda already have betrayed him twice.
That's kind of cheating. You worded that in a funny way.
Another Samurai 8 one. Hachimaru's Eternal Space having a literal downward progress bar and stats menu. Another Samurai 8 one when Fudumio shows up inside Daruma's simulation program to deliver another huge lore dump. Finally, we get something that is not that, and as the Promised Neverland, where Ratri escapes his bonds and runs screaming into the facility.
Because they tied up and held at gunpoint, and he just runs away and is free.
Just screaming the whole time, so he couldn't have been less subtle about it. It's the visual for that one that makes me laugh so hard. His stupid face.
Yeah. And then afterwards, he's like, "I'll just stab her."
Shiki responding in a response to a flashback that he pulled in Dragon Show's memories with its gravity power.
Which is a thing he just does occasionally now. So
it's one of those ones that when you say it out loud, you recognize how dumb it is. And oh man, it's a really good one. The U.S. president makes a contract with the Gun Devil to go after Makima, causing a massacre. That was from Chainsaw Man.
Kind of what the fuck. That's a what the fuck.
Yeah,
so.
Still what the fuck, but yeah. The entire final battle with the Hyobi, including the random motorcycle entrance from Bone Collection. It's a good one. Mariah the robot explains everything to Teppei and justifies all the plot holes and cries despite having no emotions with Time Paradox. Kurama, like it's the new mode to nuclear fusion.
That's not mine, but that is probably like just on its face the funniest. Never mind.
Momoshiki comes out of nowhere and stabs Sasuke in the eye with a kunai. And then finally, after many dramatic developments, Chainsaw Man, Denji goes for a burger, and Kobeni is there.
My actual what the fuck moment of the year is did not make the cut on this list, which is the reveal. Wait, was this year or was it last year? Either way, it might win every year for me.
Was it the video game part? No, that was last year. That was the point we read through it in the list and we couldn't stop laughing. And we were like, yeah, that's it. We didn't even finish the list. I don't think we stopped there. We're like, it has to be because it doesn't sound dumb until you say it with your voice and then it gets funnier and funnier.
All right, fine. If that was last year, then okay, I guess I'll pick something else.
Even though it's not the one we laughed the most at, what I think of like the biggest, in the same spirit of that moment, the one that'll stand out to me is the Mariah the Robot chapter, because it's just, it's so funny to think about it, of this series that was going so far off the deep end, and then it had this robot god sit there and just start explaining everything, and just Teppei being like, why didn't you do this? He's like, I tried, it didn't work, she always dies, I don't know what you want from me. You solve it!
Thing.
Someone like, what happens if you just tell her to stop drawing manga? She still dies, I don't know.
Listen, I thought about this. Definitely. Shut up.
I tried.
You can make that yours. Mine is going to be much less out of nowhere, but still just like it's just such a stupid character interaction moment. But it's gonna be Samurai 8 again. But it's the moment where Ben explains Pains he betrays son his parents, and then is like, anyway, here's a sword, kill your best friends. And then he's shocked when he gets his head cut off.
Oh God. I'll be, that's a good one. The other big one I thought of is Rachi, because it makes me laugh so hard to think about. I did accidentally skip it. The audience, by the way, agreed with you about the best speech. Or maybe I did mention, I don't remember. But their biggest what the fuck moment is the Kobeni burger chapter in Chainsaw Man. Which makes sense because when we had Tekken on, I believe he literally said, I don't know what the fuck is happening after reading this chapter. So it is, in that way, a very literal biggest what the fuck. So then we have the best 2-page spread.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of them in here.
A lot of Chainsaw Man ones, because there were some really cool visuals that happened in Chainsaw Man this year.
Yes. And this does include cover pages and things like that. So, you know, there's those things. Nick, do you have a particular favorite?
Oh, I don't know.
There are just an obscene number of Chainsaw Man ones. I don't know. I'm also kind of at a point where I don't know which one I enjoyed the most. I don't know why the fuck the 4 shining stars from fucking Fairy Tail or Eden Zero made it in this list.
I don't know.
Fucking weebs.
I don't think that anything got eliminated from this. It was just
I think I was told to at some point, and I was just like, I'll get to that later. It's kind of funnier that I didn't do it, right?
I don't like going for ones that aren't actually full 2-page spreads, but I'm going to do it this time, and that's going to be when we're in the Born to Boil chapter, and Odin has all of the Akazaya 9 held up on a plank while he takes all of the boiling.
Yeah, I mean, it probably is that one. In terms of at least, like, the weight of that moment, I mean, quite literally, you do feel it, where he carries everyone on him, and everyone's just saying, what are you doing? I mean, I think I'm going to agree. I think that's my favorite as well. It was either that or one of the Mashle ones, but that one's really great. That's also what the audience picked.
If you go purely off of, like, visually, this is cool, it's probably not that. But in terms of the moment that had the biggest, this stuck with me, it would be that, easily.
All right. So now we have Best Twist, and there are quite a few for this one. Why Man being on the moon from Dr. Stone, that Orochi doesn't want to rule Rano, he just wants to basically punish everybody because he was part of a clan that was persecuted there. Denjiro being Kyoshiro, and the whole deal with that. Kanjuro being a traitor from One Piece. The actual real identity of Santa Claus, Chainsaw Man. There's a lot. There are some that there's a lot on here. I can't mention them all. The Gun Devil already having been defeated. Kaido taking over Wano so he can turn into Onigashima, and he just fucking murders Orochi to do it. There's a lot of really good ones on here. Did you have a favorite in the list?
I think that the one that was the most surprising would have probably been one of the One Piece ones for me. But in terms of, like, the way that it just made sense, I'm going to go with the one where Makima has helped Denji this whole time just so she can break him, because she couldn't just take control of him because of the contra with Pochita. It's like, when that's revealed, it's like, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then you can look back and see, like, how everything was kind of set up. So maybe it's not the biggest, like, whoa, I never saw that coming, but it's like, no, that's a really satisfying twist to me.
I'm right along the same way. The notion, it's not a big twist, like, in terms of delivery, but the moment they go into that meeting room and Makima just casually reveals, oh no, the Gun Devil's already been defeated and contained. It's contained in these different, like, all these places have different parts of it. And suddenly it's not like we have to go out and hunt the gun, like the Gun Devil. Like, that's just not going to happen. Like, it's just such a big moment, but it's not treated as such in the series. It's just part of a conversation that has to happen. And you're just like, oh, the entire way I was processing what the future of the series was going to be has now completely changed. Like, I assumed there was some big showdown with the Gun Devil eventually going to happen, and instead there's a very personal showdown with a part of the Gun Devil, but like not the thing that was kind of built from the very start of the series. So in terms of like the way the twist actually realigned the way I view things, that was probably the strongest one for me. The audience picked the Osamu moment where he disguised a hound, disguising as an asteroid as their twist, and that's a great moment too. Then we have best fight. So we start with the A rank fight or the B rank war fight that was happening, which is Tamakoma 2 versus Namiya versus Yuba versus Sakoma, which I guess is kind of cheating, but I guess in the same way, it is just one giant fight. So what are you going to do? There was the Team 7 and Kawaki versus Boro fight from Boruto, which actually was legitimately a really good fight.
Very good, yeah.
Senku and Ibarra, Senku and Kohaku. No, never mind. Sorry, I started reading it and I was like, never mind. That wasn't a great one.
We're not doing a poker fight, guys.
Yeah.
It was not involved enough. Not
Denji and Kwanzi versus Santa Claus. Yami and Asta versus Dante from Black Clover. Denji versus, Aki, Gun Fiend Aki, whatever you want to call him. Mash versus Abyss. Ryusui and Senku versus Stanley in the aerial dogfight. And I think that's pretty much all of them. And then Kafka versus Hoshina.
It's weird because like a lot of these are like, that wasn't very long. But then I think of some of the others and it's like, oh, that was very long. And so, really,
yeah.
I'm going to go with Team 7 and Kawaki against Boro. In terms of just the action in it, I think that there were some where it was like kind of more satisfying to see what happened. I think that, like Denji versus Aki was a very dramatic sequence of events, but for the exact same reason that it's so effective, I'm not going to pick it because you don't see a lot of the action that happens because, you're instead getting punched in the gut by that snowball fight hallucination that Aki's having. Like, that's the thing that makes it so good is that you don't actually see the fight very much.
Yeah.
So
I think the one I'm going to go with is I think it's going to be the Tamakoma fight from the World Trigger. It's tough because I have trouble kind of processing it, but the end of that fight and what we got this year was really good. That Osamu moment deserves like a special standout in some point. I think that's probably where it is. The only other one that even comes close is like Denji versus Aki, but that's not really a fight in the same way. Right. Like that's kind of like a spectacle. Like I just can't judge it in the same way. It's so much more visceral in that way. But that's another one I would at least consider. The audience agreed with me though on this one, where Tamakoma's rank war is their favorite of the year.
Yes.
Now let's do most improved character, Nick. This is usually a character who we didn't enjoy and then found ourselves enjoying significantly more by the end of the year, though not always the case. So in this year, we have Yuno from Black Clover, Sylvia the Handler from Spy Family, who actually has a name this year, Osamu from World Trigger, Chika from World Trigger, Sekijo from We Never Learn. I think we all loved her. Fucking Mirko from My Hero Academia. Aki from
thirsty people.
Aki from
I know
Chainsaw
she didn't
Man.
really have a character before this year, admittedly, and she had some cool action sequences, but come on, guys.
Aki from Chainsaw Man, Suzu from Ayakashi Triangle.
Why are there Ayakashi Triangle? It started halfway through the year, guys.
And Makima from Chainsaw Man.
This is easily Yuno for me.
Yeah, it has to be. Yuno is legitimately a character I'm actually excited to read about now, and I hated him.
He's not amazing, but we started off this year thinking he was incredibly boring and stupid, and now, you kind of care that like that stuff happens, that he's invested in stuff. So gotta take that.
Yep. I'll note the audience. Actually, hold on, wait. There, yes, the audience agreed. Yuno from Black Clover is the character, our most approved character.
It's unanimous. Yes.
So this one, I don't know if you want to do this.
I'll take the controls here, Chris.
All right.
So around the start of the year, I decided to introduce a new awards segment for the show, which was the Bleach Memorial Best Severed Limb Award. Unfortunately, at some point along the way, I did not explain myself very well. The idea was that this was for spectacular instances of characters having a limb removed or entirely destroyed, and there kept on being little cases where it was like, well, does this count? Does this count? Does this count? Hey, the arm was maimed, but it wasn't torn off. Hey, Dante's entire torso got blown away. Does this count? And yeah, that's my bad. And it's also my bad that I didn't take especially good care to track everything that happened this year. I'll name some of the instances that happened. Like, so Weiss's arm gets cut off in Eden Zero. Remember that incredibly dark moment that happens in that parallel universe? Some limbs got chopped off in World Trigger. Andy would cut off his limbs early on in Undead Unluck in order to use the regeneration to actually move around. Arthur has his arm bitten off at the start of the year in Seven Deadly Sins. There's a counting of a puppet arm being cut off in Chainsaw Man. It's like, hey, I guess that kind of counts. Mieruko got her arm twisted off in My Hero Academia, which I'm not sure if it actually entirely came off, but whatever. Matsukaze cut off his master's arm in that one flashback in Dr. Stone. Remember that thing that established what a great character Matsukaze was? Don't you really care who he is? Yeah. I guess a hand got cut off in Bone Collection at one point. I guess I'll believe you. Aizawa cut off his own leg in My Hero Academia because of the power nullifying bullet, and so as to keep his quirk intact. And also Magu taking off parts of his body. And I think the latest instance that happens was Kiku getting her arm cut off by Kaido in that moment that you mentioned earlier on. But for me, the reason that I didn't keep especially good track of this from the beginning of the year was because early on something happened that was a clear winner, and nothing else was going to top it, which was when everyone's in hell in Chainsaw Man and the Darkness Devil appears and cuts off literally everyone's arms. It could not be anyone else. Like he just cuts them all off in a 2-page spread, and their arms spell out darkness.
I thought their arms spelled out Makima.
You might be right.
Yeah,
but
you're right.
It is the Darkness Devil. It has to be. Cutting off everyone's
the audience agrees with you, by the way. Yeah. So you're in good company. All right, now the crown jewels, so to speak, of this. Let's start with best villain. Usually the more entertaining one, because, villains are kind of just more entertaining than heroes a lot of the time. Plus, villains are changing week to week or year to year. So for this, we have Ibarra, Zeno from Dr. Stone, Orochi from One Piece, Zeno from Black Clover, Dr. Zeno also from... Okay, that's why I got confused. Their names are basically the same. Is it Xenon? Isn't that supposed to be the difference? One of them Xenon?
It's a character. I don't remember.
All right, Santa Claus from Chainsaw Man, Stanley from Dr. Stone, Makima for Chainsaw Man, Ishiki from Boruto, Dante from Vanica from Black Clover, Sosuke from Ayakashi Triangle, and Kaido from One Piece.
I think you could definitely make an argument for Kaido. I think that he was very imposing and cool. Orochi had the really cool, I just hate everyone thing, but then, Kaido cut his head off, so he became irrelevant. But it was Makima's year. It was the year where she was just like, yeah, I'm the villain. Duh, obviously. And Chainsaw Man wasn't perfect all along the way. And I think that even Makima occasionally kind of didn't look so good, when she had the multiple moments of, oh, I guess we're just screwed. We can't beat the Chainsaw Man. Damn. That was she gave that exact reaction twice. But the good outweighed the bad, I think, for her character in particular.
Begrudgingly, I'm giving it to Makima. Solely because, and it's weird, because as I'm thinking through it, I'm like, I think there was more bad in my mind than necessarily good when it comes to Makima. A lot of the moments people tend to enjoy more, I just don't have the same feelings towards. And I wanted to, for a moment, give it to Kaido, or there was even a moment I was like, maybe Ishiki for Boruto. But I was like, that feels like it's going to be a meme going forward. So I had to think, and I will say this. The moment with Makima and Denji in her apartment where power is at the door and Denji is walking to it is so effectively disturbing and uncomfortable that it's enough for me to be like, okay, I don't think anybody else was better than her this year.
Yeah. Just that whole sequence where she just breaks him. It's like, yeah.
And the audience agrees. Makima is their character of the year, or villain of the year, I should say. Which leads us just one, which is best series of the year. We already kind of went through the options that are available, so we don't need to go through those again. Nick, what was your series of the year?
There were so many good series this year.
I will note the audience. I'll make their pick first. They picked Chainsaw Man as their series of the year.
That's yeah. I mean, that's not all that surprising. There was a lot of good stuff in Chainsaw Man, but this is going to be a weird one because usually when we go through stuff, if something has started like midway through the year, I don't like leaning towards that one because I'm like, oh well, maybe it'll just be good next year. And also considering that Chainsaw Man has, as we know it, is now done, it'll probably continue. It sort of feels like I should pick that one because it ended and had a relatively strong year overall. But the last several months were kind of a mixed bag. And there was one series that was insanely consistently good this year. And that is Kaiju No. 8. And that is my best series of this year. It was an incredibly joyful thing to have that series be introduced to us and to read through it and for it to be as good as it was basically every single week. So
yeah, I can absolutely understand that. So I mentioned a while ago in the Discord that Mashle Magic and Muscles is the series I enjoy the most every week. It's been so fun. Every chapter makes me just genuinely feel better. It's been there to help lift me up when I'm having like bad days and I'm having like issues and I need something to like make me feel better. It's there. But We Never Learn was consistently like the highs of We Never Learn fucking stomp the fucking tits off of anything else in the magazine this year. Anything else fucking destroys it. The Asumi arc is so fucking good, I'm embarrassed. The Iruka arc has such a fucking phenomenal conclusion. It's better than anything else. But then I looked it up, and it turns out Mashle actually was running the entire year, so it actually does go to Mashle. I thought Mashle came out in like June, and I was like,
I had a moment where like
I had this whole thing. I was gonna be like, fucking We Never Learned was when Mashle was still crawling in diapers. We Never Learned was fucking kicking tits and taking and then I was like, oh wait, it came out in January. Yeah. All right, I guess it's Mashle.
You basically just did the whole thing where it's like, oh my god, he's cashing in. Here it is. There's gonna be a new champion. Oh, but wait, the guy who cashed in is Baron Corbin, so he just gets rolled up.
Help me! I'm a simp for Mashle. I think there were a lot of very good series this year. I can say it if it's not negative. I'm not insulting myself. This is a moment of pride I take. Look, I enjoyed a lot of series this year. I think quite a few were really, really good. One Piece is another one I'd consider. And I legitimately, I was actually thinking, I think it is We Never Learn, until I got to that point where I was just like, oh, right, Mashle actually came out at the start of the year. So my whole logic of like Mashle wasn't running the whole year. The same way like you kind of had reservations with Kaiju No. 8. Kaiju No. 8 was also one I was considering too.
Oh, yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, I think it has to be Mashle. It's just the series I enjoy the most, and I think consistently it's been the one I've had the most fun with.
I think that is it for like the awards that we actually go through on the show.
Yes.
But I do appreciate that people have documented like their favorite like moments from us talking on the podcast and stuff, like talking about like when we had our multiple different jokes about Send the Silent from Samurai 8, and the angel devil complaining when he has to do things that he doesn't have hands, even when stuff that he doesn't need hands to do. It's like, oh man, I've had fun stuff doing this show. So
yeah.
Thanks,
Look,
guys.
I think this year has been a very good year for manga and for our enjoyment of things. There's so many things that, like, as we just ended the year just being like, oh man, I fucking loved talking Bone Collection. I love talking fucking Eden Zero stupidity and talking all these sorts of just goofy bad moments and great moments too that we've just been able to enjoy. So I really do think that in maybe a weird silver lining to the fucking death scale that was this year otherwise, I think this was a very good year for manga. And I'm very happy about it. I think the future looks bright for a lot of the stuff we talk about.
I agree. Yeah. It's going to be very interesting going forward because so much of the manga that's in Jump right now is so new. This is, I literally did, like, to make sure I wasn't, like, having illusions about how new all the manga in Jump are, I actually did something very, very dorky and, like, charted out, like, year to year how old all the series in Jump are, and it's ridiculous. Like, the median age of a series in Jump is, less than 1 year. It's absurd. But
It's like Mission Yozakura is like the 6th most long running, or like I think it's like the 5th now or 4th after We Never Learn ended, and Chainsaw Man.
Yeah, the only ones that you can consider long running now, besides One Piece, are My Hero and Black Clover, and then it's like Dr. Stone, and then I think it's Yozakura Family.
Yeah,
I think that's basically it.
It's crazy.
So, but yeah, I mean, you can say that makes it like, oh, I mean, there's like nothing, there are so few things that are like established in Jump, but you know what? That also opens up like possibilities. It's like there's all these new things that you can just, follow from the beginning now, and I'm really excited to see where that goes in the future, especially because there was some stuff that came out this year that we have really enjoyed covering, and just enjoyed reading. So
yeah, I think it's a very exciting time, and I think we're gonna have some cool stuff planned for next year as well. You never know what's gonna happen, so stay tuned for that. And with that, I guess it's the time for us to start heading off.
You get on that old dusty trail.
Get on that old dusty trail. Again, a huge thanks, by the way, again to Ninja, who has spent the year basically categorizing all this. Forgot Magu-chan, so not perfect, but
don't let his ego get too big. This completely took it upon himself task that he did doing a favor for us.
But Nick, he forgot one of the
guys. This whole thing with all this stuff where we got to relive different moments from the manga that we've talked about this year would not have been possible without not just Ninja X3I's help, but the input of every single member of our wonderful community. And you can talk with everyone that is worth talking to that listens to this podcast. Yeah, I said it. If you're not part of the Discord server, then what are you even doing? We have a Discord server where there are all sorts of conversations that take place, talking about the manga as they come out, talking about the recommendation that we're working on, even dorkier stuff beyond that. There's a My Hero Academia role-playing server, and every Saturday we play with anyone who wants to show up. Basically, we play some Among Us on Saturday mornings. So if you wanted to participate in any of that, check out the Discord server. Ninja X3I will, I'm sure, continue to keep track of all the stuff that we do, and you can find the Google Doc that he maintains on that server as well. We want to give also a special thanks to people who chip into our Patreon account, patreon.com/weekly manga recap. It allows us to create bonus content for you guys to enjoy.
Yes.
And we want to give a special thanks to Steve Mann, our tarot card artist. You can check out his work wherever boobs are allowed to be drawn. And to Winsley Del Cheddar and Milo Jack Stillitz for creating the opening sequence of Weekly Manga Recap. We will return with more manga next year, Wednesdays starting at 7-ish Eastern time, sometime between 7 and 8 is when we start recording the show. To stay updated on exactly when we begin recording, you can follow us at RoloT, at Nick F Time, and at Weekly Manga Recap for the podcast account. And we'll let you know exactly when we start the show.
Yeah. So again, thank you everybody. Because of you guys, it has been a fantastic year. I hope 2021 is a better year for the world at large in quite a many ways. But I'm looking forward to spending another year with you all. Ninja, next time though, remember Magu-chan should be on the list. I don't know why I have to tell this to you twice.